All right, so I'm going to do another little, hopefully short video, kind of continuing with my testimony. And I'm going to talk about, I guess, speaking in tongues. So in my first testimony, I talked about how I got filled with the Holy Spirit and in Bill's office. And in that moment, you know, I was overwhelmed with the presence of God. And I had never experienced this. This was no doubt in my mind. I had been filled with the Holy Spirit. And so, but what didn't happen is I didn't speak in tongues, all right? And I had read the little book, you know, and it talked about speaking in tongues. And speaking in tongues is evidence of being baptized in the Holy Spirit and all this kind of stuff. And I had read all of the scriptures in the book of Acts where people were recorded to have been filled with the Holy Spirit. We start on the day of Pentecost, and they started speaking in tongues and prophesying. And then at Cornelius' house, while Peter's still preaching, they burst out in tongues and prophesying. When Philip went to Samaria and Peter and John came to pray for them so that they might receive the Holy Spirit, that was the verse I told you that sold me, you know, because they had believed and been baptized and then went on. And then Peter and John came because they felt like, whoa, no, we got one more step here. And so they prayed for them to receive the Holy Spirit. It does not say in that passage they spoke in tongues. But it's the most logical thing that happened because that's what they did on Pentecost. That's what they did at Cornelius' house. And there was something evident enough that the sorcerer wanted to buy it. So the Holy Spirit was poured out and there was some kind of manifestation that you could visibly hear or see or both. It just doesn't tell us what it was. The next one was Saul's conversion. He was waiting, and Ananias, I think, came to him and prayed for him to receive the Holy Spirit and receive his sight, but prayed for him to be filled with the Holy Spirit. And he was, and then he was baptized. So it's, and then it doesn't say that Paul spoke in tongues in that case, but he wrote the chapter on it in Corinthians 13, and he said in that chapter, I thank God I speak in tongues more than any of you. So the last one was Acts 19. Paul meets some disciples, and he prays for them. He asked them, he said, did you receive the Holy Spirit when you believed? And they're like, well, we didn't know. We didn't know there was a Holy Spirit, you know, so they didn't have a full teaching. But they were called disciples, and Paul prayed for them to receive the Holy Spirit, and it said they spoke in tongues and prophesied. So I know speaking in tongues is weird, and I'm going to tell you how it happened to me. But I'll tell you that I know it's weird. Okay, I know it's strange, and I know it's misunderstood. So what I'd like to do is tell you what happened to me, and I'd like to try to explain what it's for. Okay, to kind of take some of the mystery out of it, some of the fear out of it. But I've told God many times, okay, if it was up to me, I would have left the whole tongues thing out of it, right? Because it tends to be controversial. Actually, it used to be. I don't know if it is, but when I got started, this was like very controversial. So, so I asked Bill after I'd prayed and cried and felt the Holy Spirit. I asked Bill. I said, "Why didn't I speak in tongues?" And he said, well, it's not always automatic, you know, and if this is a gift that you want, ask the Lord to give it to you. And my recommendation is go get by yourself somewhere and just ask the Lord to give you the gift of speaking in tongues. And he said, then try it. And I was like, what? And he said, yeah, go ahead and try to speak in tongues. And I was like, that seems a little fake to me. He said, you're not going to be able to do it unless the Lord gives it to you. But he said, when Peter walked on water, the first thing he had to do was get out of the boat. His act of faith enabled him to walk on water. And I said, okay, if you think it's okay with God, then I'll do that. So I went and got a loan. I was actually renting a house with some other fraternity brothers. I didn't have any business doing that, but and it, you know, I mean, it was a waste of money. I still stayed at home most of the time. But I was there, and I got a loan in this little bedroom. had the lights down low, and there was a couple of fraternity brothers there, so I was trying to be real secretive. And I did what Bill said. I said, I got down on my knees, actually. I said, Lord, I want to speak in tongues. This is a gift, and, I'd love to have it because it proved to me, so much more. And I tried. It was like, boom, 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 boom. I don't know. Nothing, really. I was like, well, that was frustrating. So right after that, a knock came on the door, and my fraternity brother wanted to see if I wanted to go out or something. And I was like, no, I'm busy. Of course, I'm in the room with the lights off. Kind of probably looked weird. So I got back down on my knees and tried it again. And it went about the same as the last time. And nothing. Nothing. And so another knock came on the door, and my mama had called. And so I talked to her for a second and said she wanted me to come over. She was worried about me and all that kind of stuff. So I hung up the phone with her, and I just sat on the bed. And I was just frustrated at that point, like this ain't gonna happen. And so I thought to myself, and I'm not saying this is a prerequisite or anything, this is just how it happened. I said, well, maybe I should ask for forgiveness, because that's what we did as Baptists. We asked for forgiveness all the time. And so I just said, Lord, please forgive my sins and all that kind of stuff. And I took a deep breath, and I was sitting on the bed this time. I wasn't on my knees anymore. I just took a deep breath, and all of a sudden, out of my mouth, fluently, came this other language. And it was fast, and it was a lot of words. They weren't the same words. It was like, a whole language. And at first it scared me. And I was thinking, I remember thinking as I'm untying my bow tie, who stole my Honda, just, that's just a phrase. But I'm thinking in my head, this is a miracle, because I'm not doing this. And after a while, I started wondering, how long do you do this for? I don't know the rules or remember just a day or two ago, I thought the Holy Spirit was God's wife. So, I'm progressing here, but I don't know the rules. And I'm fluently speaking in tongues, and I'm thinking to myself, how long do you do it for? And how do you know when to stop? And I thought, can I stop it? If I stop it, will God be mad if it's the wrong time? And all this is going through my head while out of my mouth is just coming this other language. Well, after a while, I felt like it was okay, and I was able to stop it, and everything was fine. That was my first encounter with speaking in tongues. And from then on, when I got quiet, got with the Lord, tried to get reconnected with the Holy Spirit, I would be able to also speak in tongues as part of my prayer life. So, of course, and that's continued for 30 plus years. I still speak in tongues every day, every single day of the week. And when I pray with people, my spirit is praying, and part of that is praying or praying in tongues. So I think I'll try to explain, I think I'll stop this here, and I think I'll come back and try to explain what I understand speaking in tongues is biblically and functionally, because I know a lot of you have been filled with the Spirit that's going to watch this, but you haven't spoken tongues. So I'm going to try to do a little teaching on that, and hopefully you'll be blessed by it. All right, I'll be back. It's only 9 minutes on this one, and I'll come back and do. I don't have my Bible with me, but I can kind of do it from memory. If you're interested, you can pull out yours and do a little research. All right, see you in a minute.